Having and keeping money is something many people struggle with. I know I have at various times in my life. The question that we're asking is, why is that? Why do people struggle to earn money and then keep money, particularly when the rules to do that are very simple? And that's something Alex, Darby, and I ponder as we explore financial wellness and the revolving door.
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
G'day, Alex. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, well, thank you. Just enjoying we finally got summer here down in Australia, which is a nice change. It was been very
Nice.
cold
Oh,
up until...
we're in winter here.
Well, that's what we had. It was quite strange. We never had temperature over 30 degrees until recently, and then after New Year, it's sort of the weather has fined up, and it was 37 today, so it was
Wow.
quite sunny and nice. Yeah.
Well, I don't think we've ever had temperature over 30 degrees over here. Currently, it's -2.5.
No, I do. I enjoyed that a lot when I was, because at times I've been in London and in Europe in winter and had the white Christmas, which I really love. There's something about that coldness, and I was reading somewhere that actually you can prolong your life with that. That's where they do those treatments with putting frost on your face or blowing frost on your face to make you look younger. I don't know the science behind it, but maybe all those.
Well, there is a good science behind it. If you ever listen to anything with Tim Wim Hof, the guy that lives in the cold, and there is a thing about if you have a cold shower, if you turn your water cold in the shower for 2 minutes every day, it slows down the aging process. Something to do with the reducing inflammation in the body, and inflammation speeds up the aging process. So although inflammation is good because it helps you heal, excessive inflammation is not good because it makes you age quicker. So cold therapy helps inflammation as well as what you eat, what you drink, that kind of thing.
Yes, well, obviously your diet and that would contribute, but that makes sense now. Now I'm not going to complain so much when I'm down here in the beach house and someone turns on the tap while I'm in the shower and it suddenly gets really cold.
Yeah, we're doing you a favour.
Exactly. So thank you.
Or they're saying you look too old. I don't know, whichever one.
Well, yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. Yeah. But maybe that's the case. But yeah, we wanted to talk about, because I love the title that you came up with. The topic was financial wellness and revolving doors. Because I related to that from my perspective in my life, where I've gone backwards and forwards sometimes in my life, in between having plenty of money and then having none. I think you were saying that you relate to the same sort of scenario as well, but more so, was it you wanted to talk about how we get to that state and what we need to do to be in a constant state?
Yeah, so it was based on my own experience just 2 weeks ago it was the fact that financial wellness actually has nothing to do with how many dollars or pounds you've got in your bank account. And it's more about your relationship with money and actually what financial wellness means. And it kind of sort of slapped me around the face a bit 2 weeks ago when our family financial stability was rocked, because my husband does big jobs, but they're short. He goes in, completely sort of sorts it out and then moves on. Yeah. And he sorted this one out quicker than perhaps he'd expected to. And decided over Christmas that, actually his job is done. We were expecting that to not be probably another year away.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It came really out of the blue. Although actually hindsight would say it didn't at all. It was a logical process, but in the moment,
it's amazing how hindsight does that, isn't it?
It's like, it was a bit like, oh yeah, that all makes complete sense actually. But in the moment, it was a bit like, oh God, we didn't expect this, and we hadn't really prepared for it. But the thing is that actually financially we're absolutely fine. It isn't about we've got no money. We'll all have an income stream that will stop temporarily. But it was more my reaction. My reaction was one of, I'm going to be destitute. Oh my God, I'm going to have to take my daughter out of school. I'm going to have to sell the house. I just went to this really odd place. Yeah. And I thought, this is the revolving doors of life, because that was a revolving door. And actually, this had nothing to do with money. It was about my personal well-being around my own security and stability, financial wellness, I think it comes down to. And I just found it a really interesting subject that I've been thinking about ever since. And what does it take to create financial wellness? Because I don't really believe it's got anything to do with how much money you earn.
I completely agree with that, because I know some friends of mine that are actually quite extremely wealthy, and they live in panic all the time that they're going to lose it. And that's, and it shows actually now that they're getting older, they've actually started to age a bit quicker. We talk about age before and cold showers.
Maybe it should be financial wellness, revolving doors and cold showers.
That is an attractive topic to get attention for sure. Or title, I should say. I love that. But I was just wondering about that. Like you say, it's you have this, because I'm sure from your experience when that happened, you're not in a position where you were hand to mouth anyway. So it wasn't like, okay, I've not got the income. Yeah. So it's what do you think it is that because I look at my background as well, and there's times there where I would almost, it was like I'd be doing really well, and then I'd get really worried that it's not going to last, and then I'd do things to make it not last, and then it wouldn't last. So it was self-fulfilling. So what
self-sabotage and self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. What do you think that is?
I really think it's conditioning and it's programming from when we grew up, because I can't put it down to anything else.
Yeah.
Because I know that I've got a daughter who's 14, about to turn 15, and what I do, she does. I've been a single mum forever, so we are very close. But what I do, she does. Down to if I go to the gym, she goes to the gym. If I go on the treadmill, she goes on the treadmill. If I run an extra mile, she'll get back on the treadmill and run an extra mile. It's like carbon copy. So I think that I must have been the same with my mum, because whether it's a girl thing or a boy thing, I do not know. But I don't know whether, I think I was the same with my parents. So what they did, I did. So I know that my mum used to write books. She was an author. And back then in the 80s, when publishing books there was no self-publishing. It didn't exist. It was all big publishers. She got a royalty check once a year. That was it.
Yeah. Wow.
And I remember my parents running to the post box, the letterbox downstairs, every morning for about 3 weeks, once a year,
waiting for this check.
And it was like they got the check, and then it was big spending, and it was like splurging on, and then it went into famine mode towards the end of that time, and then it would start again. And I think it was the whole, they would behave like it was going to run out, but then when it came, they used to spend big. And I think that mentality I carried through, because I'm like you, I've always earned really good money, but my God, did I spend it, because I'd get to a point where I think it's all going too well. Something's going to go wrong. Yeah. The check's not going to arrive. I still now go to the post box to check for the check, even though I don't get checks in the post. Yes. But that is 35 plus years ago that I'm still running to the post box when the postman comes. And my husband laughs, saying, "What are you waiting for? The royalty check. If you get a royalties, I'll go directly into your bank account, love." But it's a habit, isn't it? I think it's conditioning and programming from our parents.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's where our minds come from. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean,
but what do you think that programming is, though? Because I look at it from my perspective, similar sort of thing. I remember when I was younger, my parents put away money for me into a building society bank account, or building society account. Now, in Australia, a little bit different. The big banks are actually government protected. They can't go broke. And they have a lot of controls around it, what they can and can't do. But we had this money in the building society, which had a much higher interest rate, which was the attraction, but didn't think through that process of this was when interest rates were like double digits, 17%, that kind of thing. So it's, we're getting really good interest. But then this, that like all things end, and the building society couldn't cover its things anymore, and the building society went under. So I lost that money essentially, or well, initially didn't have access to it. But then, as the administrators took over and started realizing assets and things like that, we get a check. Now, my dad gave me the first check. I think I was 16 or 17. And so it came to me, and he gave it to me. And I bought the most expensive shoes that I could find. These sneakers, and green's my favorite color, so they had green, fluoro green on them, white and green, and I blew that money really, really quickly. And I compare that to my son, for example. Now, my son, he's 14, and I have been talking about investing, and obviously my attitude is very different now too, and maybe that's what's run off. But I look at it, but what I notice is different is the spend side of things. That hasn't changed. I still like to spend big. I have a massive Lego collection, and I love my Lego.
Said that last time, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And but when my son, like for example, if he will, if he does well in school and gets a good result in a mark or something like that, I'll reward him. Say, hey, give you $50 or $100 or whatever as a bonus. And what I do with that is say, here, what do you want me to do with that? Now, and I've set up an investment fund. We have a private equity fund where we do investing in, and he's got shares in that, so to speak, in that, and then gets invested in that. Majority of time, he will turn to me and say, put in the equity fund. Not, and I say, and when it comes to birthdays, it's like, what do you want to buy? What would you like for your birthday and Christmas? And he goes, no, this Christmas that just went, he just wanted some AirPods because he lost his AirPods, and he'd been having ones with cables on it for a while because I wouldn't buy him new ones because he lost them. And so I'm wondering about what that difference in mentality is, because even though, I'm
it's
very
parenting,
good at,
though, isn't it? It's parenting, full stop. Because like you had to say you had an investment fund set up for you, but then that investing, but you lost it. Whether it was a temporary loss or not, you lost it forever. So for a period of time, you lost that money. So you go back to me. I lived this great life, and then my mum died. My dad declared bankrupt, and I came out with absolutely nothing. So from 16, I lived on my own. With no money from my parents. They didn't invest. They hadn't done anything. My dad went off and with their money, and I got a job. La la la. So I went from everything being fine to losing it all, and then you sort of had that savings, but then it was gone. And I think that kind of fear of what if it all goes kind of thing sticks with you, because I have lived like that ever since. And it's only been this year, this last 2 weeks, where I've thought, hang on a minute, this is a pattern that I'm seeing, because I will get to the point where I'll panic, and I'll either stockpile a little bit of things that I know that I don't want to run out of in case I run out of money, which is a really bizarre mentality, but it's all back from there. And then our kids, I've taught my daughter financial budgeting and financial sort of that money is just money. Don't ignore, don't attach to it. Just understand what the value of it is, and it's just paper. It's just numbers on a spreadsheet. But just make sure that you've got a good relationship. So I've given her an allowance now for 2 years that she buys everything from. So she has to then budget herself, and she knows what she can spend and what she can't spend. And now she's really good with money, and she will say, like your son, I'll say, what do you want for your birthday, which is coming up in 2 weeks' time. And she'll say, you know what, I actually I don't really want anything. I've just put some money in my account. Like, and it's like, what? Like, really, like, it's all, I would never say that. I would never have done that at her age. So I think it's just my parenting is different because my parents didn't teach me about money. And I don't, and there are thing about parents is that you know what you don't want to pass on, don't you? You don't always know what you want to pass on, but you definitely know what you don't want to pass on. And I don't want to pass on the financial burden that my parents gave me, really.
But how do you think that works? How do you, I mean, from that perspective, because I look at it, for example, my grandparents, they came as war refugees after World War II to Australia with nothing. Just, they had a couple of suitcases and that was it. And my grandfather on my dad's side never learned to speak English. And so he didn't earn a great income. He worked in a coal mine and he did that. And what he managed to do, and they never had any debt from what my dad tells me, never had any debt. So they managed to save enough money initially to buy a block of land, which he built a house on. Started as a 2-room house with a dirt floor, 2 rooms, not 2 bedrooms, 2 rooms, just to clarify for the millennials out there. we're talking rooms, not bedrooms. And certainly not games rooms. But so it was 2 rooms, dirt floor. So it was 1 bedroom, 1 living area, and a wood fire. And it was in a cold area, winter, very cold. And so that house eventually expanded to a 3-bedroom house that my grandfather built. And all that time as well, while he's building this house, they've saved money, because when my parents got married, my grandparents, my dad's parents, gave my mum and dad that house. They gifted it to them and had bought another house with cash. Well, the properties were cheaper, yet so was the income. And again, taking into account, my grandfather was working as a labourer, so he wasn't earning a lot of money. So how he managed to do that, I'm still flabbergasted by. I have no idea. And then my parents come along and raised me. They, from what I understand, for most of my early life, they were hand to mouth. So whatever saving technique that my grandfather and grandmother had done, wasn't passed to my mum, and also wasn't passed to my dad. It was only later in life my dad learned investing, and he's quite good at it now. But certainly when I was growing up, and maybe, as you say, you had that same thing with your parents, that you copied what it was. And so for me, when I earned money, it was like, yep. And then I'd go and spend it. Then I'd earn some more and spend it more. And I'd never really had a plan either. And I'm just wondering, is that part of, because I have that with Benjamin. I talk about with him. One time I was wondering, looking at it with the school, and I was trying to go, why isn't he that much? And he was still young, and I said to him, I said, do you know why you go to school? And he goes, no. And I explained, to learn, educate. You see that I go to work, and that I'm doing work to earn money so we can live. And I talked him through that process, and I saw a light bulb go off on his head that, okay, that's why I'm going to school. And from there, I saw a different interest in his school. And similar, because we talked a little bit about money, and with the funds that he's got in the equity fund, part of what I'm trying to teach him is that it's not hard. It's not hard work to make money. And we'll do a transaction, and he'll get some cash that as a return from that. And I'll say, you've just done that. How much effort did that take? And he goes, nothing. And I said, it's not hard, is it? And he goes, no. And I'm trying to set his mindset that one being, very risk adverse, because the strategies we use are very, very risk adverse, but they're also high return, which I don't, from an investment perspective, say, risk and reward, the higher the risk, I don't agree with that, and certainly not the case from my investing style. But I'm trying to give him a mindset where, one, it doesn't take a lot of effort. You just focus on doing the right things, and 2, you focus on not putting yourself at risk, because that's, I know from my perspective early on, I did that, where I was quite entrepreneurial, but I was almost betting the house. In some cases, did bet the house, and then had to work really hard not to lose everything. And
That's an interesting point.
Is it a case? Yeah.
That's an interesting bit you just said there, though, is that what was it, do you think, that made you so confident that you would bet your house? Because that is like the ultimate, it feels a bit like the ultimate kind of bet, doesn't it? Is the roof under your head. You're willing to bet that. So what was the mindset behind that?
Yeah, I think it was more, and I'm going to say this partly facetiously, but also partly I think my character is, if for those that are into astrology, I'm a Leo rat, and for me it's like, oh, shiny thing, I'm going to jump over there. Oh wait, that's fire. Maybe I better not be in that. And
now, how interesting. I'm a Leo as well, but I'm a Leo dog.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we both like to, we like that shiny stuff there. We're cats. We like this shiny thing. And part of it was, okay, I'm just going to give it a go. And I don't think I really thought about the downside either. If I'm being completely honest, it was like ultimate optimism bias. This is going to work. It's all, going to work. And it's just like, I'm going to go for it. Just going to go for it. Haven't really thought about a downside. Haven't really. I remember as a kid there was an 80s movie, a car race movie like Cannonball Run, but it was kind of similar to that. And the Italian, they're starting, and the Italian driver gets into the car, and it's a sports car, and it's got the mirror on the dashboard. And as a metaphor, and I love this, I was a kid, but I still loved it. He grabbed the mirror, ripped it off, and he goes, "What's behind me? I do not care." And I was just wondering whether that was the kind of the attitude that I took. It's just like, failure or what could go wrong, I don't care. I'm just going to charge forward. And it wasn't probably the most stress-free way of doing something, because it was just
but an interesting. But actually, if you look at Muhammad Ali, said that he was the greatest fighter of all time when he wasn't winning a match. Wasn't winning any boxing matches at all, but he would say, "I'm the greatest fighter of all time," and that was his standard line in any interview that he gave. "I'm the greatest fighter of all time," and everyone was thinking, "No, you're not." But then he did become the greatest fighter of all time. Then you look at Michael Jordan, who is the quote I love the most, really love, is, "Why would I worry about a shot I've not yet taken?" As in, why would I get worried about something that has not even happened yet? And he talks about the fact that he missed more shots than he got in, but nobody remembers those. Everyone remembers the ones he got in. So actually that mindset of it's just going to work is probably very powerful, actually.
That's an interesting point, because the same token you mentioned about Babe Ruth was known for hitting the most home runs, but he also struck out the most as well. People don't remember that.
No one talks about those, though, do they? They only ever talk about the ones that the winners. I think that actually the mindset behind money, which is where I go back to the financial wellness, is that my mindset is one of it's going to go because it always has, and two, probably a little bit of, do I really deserve to have this anyway, because it always goes. You can always
That's a
bring
big
it back
one.
I
want to. Can you expand on that about the deserve thing? Because I think that's a big one where a lot of people think I know. Actually, I shouldn't say no. I do think, from my perspective, the couple of times that I did sabotage early in life was, do I really deserve this? Is that? Was that something? Because you mentioned that there, was that something that you had as well, or was it?
Oh, easy, definitely. I still do, actually. If I don't keep it in check, I think it's one of those. I think it's one of those self-sabotaging habits that can be a real bugger to get rid of, and it takes some real inner work and some real sort of honesty with yourself. But actually you think, well, okay, am I worthy of this? Do I deserve this? Is this meant for me, kind of thing?
Why do you think we do that?
I think it's
is that a self-worth thing?
Yeah, definitely. Always, I think most things come down to self-worth, don't they? I think that I think even really successful people who on the surface seem to have no problems with self-worth actually do have really big problems with self-worth. They just are really good at camouflaging it. And I think that I'm not good enough, I don't deserve this, is something that we've picked up from a really long time ago and made it mean something. And actually, I'm a big believer now in all the people I work with. I'm a really big believer in just saying, okay, that's no longer true. That may have been at some point. I'm now working towards being completely enough and being completely worthy, and because otherwise we form a habit to keeping hold of bad habits. We can.
I was going to say, do you think that's part of like that spending habit that we have? I know from my perspective, buying the sneakers was because I know I've gone through this, that I didn't have great shoes compared to my friends and things like that, and I always felt I wasn't good enough because of that. Had nothing to do with the shoes, but as soon as I had the money, I went out and bought these really flash shoes so that I could feel good enough. But it didn't make me feel good enough.
No, well, that's a big part of spending habit, isn't it? People spend to fill an emotional hole, and actually, addiction to anything, everything can be addictive, but nothing can be addictive. But everything can be addictive if you're trying to fill an emotional hole, and it's the emotional hole you've got to find first. And then when you filled that hole or worked out what is missing, you'll start to see that the addictions that you had just disappear because you don't need them anymore. So buying a pair of shoes. So when I was a kid, we lived in in my mind, we had a load of money. Yeah, I went to a great school, but I was really good at running, but used to run in not running shoes. They were like tennis shoes. They were just I never had the sort of kit that everyone else had. And like you say, I think that probably made me feel like I'm not either loved. My parents didn't care. My parents never came to any of the sports days at school, never came to any match that I did, never did anything. And so you sort of have that moment of, well, I'm clearly not good enough. You don't buy me the kit and you don't come and watch me anyway. And you sort of get a bit of mick taken at school because you're not wearing the same stuff that everyone else is wearing.
I can relate.
So then you overcompensate when you're a grown up, when you've got your own money, by buying your own really good stuff. And it always bloody shoes. It's shoes with me as well. But I realised that I don't need to buy a pair of shoes anymore to make me feel good. I just want to buy a pair of shoes. Whereas it used to be, I'd need to buy the shoes to feel good about myself. And that is the big difference. And it will come back down to our upbringing, because it always does. And that's where I go with people. Of sometimes you've just got to let it go, and you can't go back and fix it. You've got to let it go.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I mean, we hear that a lot, and certainly from the perspective, I work with a lot of people that are in some difficult positions. I mentioned some dads groups that I'm part of, and trying to help there. But I noticed that a lot of that conversation that they have is mired in the past and mired in how this is really bad, but it's stuff they're talking about. Some of it's like 20 years ago, and I'm going, oh my God, is that how are you still carrying that around? But how do you let go? I mean, from my perspective, I look at some of the stuff that I did, and the process that I went through. I mean, I did some work really early on with some really good people, with some like deep unconscious mind shift stuff. It was a great guy called John Kelly, who lived down in Albany, down in Western Australia, who's this neurolinguistics, I would say, master sensei. He was just a guru. And we did some deep work together, which, I would have been 22 at the time. So that was pretty young to be doing some shifts as well, because that's I'm more than double that now, and so a lot of it, I think, flowed from there, having changed, because as you know, it's like your mind is like as they say, it's like a weaving loom, and every time a thread goes across, but if you go back and change that thread, all of a sudden everything along the line changes. And I'm just wondering, from that perspective, how do we fill that hole if we realize that we're going through this? Well, is that the first step, realizing that you're going through the same thing over and over again? Was that your process?
I think that you have to get to the point where you're bored of yourself by doing it, because if you keep hearing yourself having the same conversation, then I think there's a little bit about who you surround yourself with, and whether you're in a echo chamber or not. Because if you're in an echo chamber and everyone's letting you, I think the most powerful thing in the world is having somebody who's going to challenge you and say, how about let's look at the future? What are you working towards? Not, there's a flipping of the switch, isn't there? Yeah. And so I was talking to a woman last night who's 65, who's just wonderful, yet it's hanging on to a whole load of judgment from I don't know how many years ago. And it is in a group, we're in a group situation, and there was a lot of letting her talk about it and sort of the coups of, oh yeah, we understand. And I just said, why don't you just let it go and think about what you're doing tomorrow, and think about what you're doing the next day, and think about what you're doing in February, and then what you're going to do in August, and then what you're going to do in December, and this time next year. How cool would it be if you're going to say to us all, you know what, this is what I did, rather than talking about the past? And it's sort of, I kind of annoyed her actually to start with, because she was a bit like, well, why aren't you feeling sorry for me, I think was the the line. And then it was oh right, okay, so it's having the responsibility of, you have this in your gift, change. And I like it too, with the fact the same group of people yesterday were talking about ADHD, and as it seems like everyone's talking about ADHD at the moment, and somebody was trying to self-diagnose with ADHD, and I just said, you know what, you're gonna have to stop. None of us are doctors in this room, so just let's not go there. But also understand that actually, if you just cut sugar out of your diet, you will see a difference within about a week. Again, it did not go down very well, because of the fact that means that someone's got to take control, personal responsibility for their own outcome, when actually all they want is to take a pill to make it go away, or they want to be able to sort of be very indulgent in the past and to wallow in something that makes them feel really comfortable, because people are comfortable in their own misery, because the fact of changing something is really hard. And I sound brutal, but I'm actually, it's all said with kindness, because I work with people all the time who are stuck and have been for years, and I'm saying, look over there, not back there. What we're doing over here, not what you've done over there, because we are defined by our future, not by our past. So we can stay defined in our past, and we will live that life over and over and over, or we can decide to be just defined by the future and live a life we've not yet lived yet. And that is completely in our gift to do. Completely. I mean, you got people who say, I can't stop smoking. I've been trying to stop smoking for 30 years. And then one day they get a cancer diagnosis and they stop like that. It's easy. If the motivation is big enough for what the thing is they want to do, they will do it. If it's bigger than what they're doing, they'll do it every single time.
Because there is that, I mean, even if you go back to the Bible, it says, as you think, so you shall be. But there also seems to be a popular psychology theory that of going through and doing this. I think this regression therapy is one aspect. There's a number like that, where it's all about just going through that and talking through that and going on and on and on about it. Do you think that's helpful? I know from I've been part of groups that were like that, and I always just found it really, for me, I found it like, it wasn't painful, is probably not the right, but I found it uncomfortable just to be going over the same thing again and again. It's like, I don't need to be.
I don't know why. I don't know why.
Yeah.
When I mean, gosh, you know, we spent our 20s in therapy of some description or another. Like, you know, we talk to friends all the time, or we go and find ourselves on top of mountains, or in with gurus. You know, that's the kind of thing that I did in my 20s as well. And I always think that the 20s, you're kind of trying to work out who you are. You get to your 30s and you sort of, that's the bit where you kind of think you find out who you are, but you're not entirely sure, and it can be a bit tricky. Get to your 40s and it feels more liberating. Get to your 50s and it feels like the world has changed in a good way. But I think that there's things that you go through in life that sometimes some people might need to spend some time talking about it, but it should be a certain amount of time. Then you should stop, because otherwise it was really indulgent. So, because, you know, I lost my mum died. I've had cancer twice. I've been divorced. I've been in an emotionally abusive relationship. I've been financially stretched. I mean, God, I am a therapist's dream if I was that way inclined. I'm not interested. I'm just not interested, because I'd rather talk about the future. I'd rather talk about what I'm going to do, not what I've been doing. So my personal view is I'm not a fan of therapy.
So how do we, I mean, from that perspective, because like when we're talking about financial wellness and this need to fill holes. Because I mean, you look at, for example, Warren Buffett, for example. Now, this guy's like mega wealthy by anybody's standard, lives in the same house that he got married in. He says the best investment he ever made was his wedding ring. He's, he gets his McDonald's on the way to work, the same meal, and he just goes, my needs are not that big. I mean, I don't need to spend money. How do you think we get to that mindset of just not needing to do that, being okay with, because it's not like he can't spend a lot of money.
No, he doesn't want. It's not. I don't think it's a need. I think it's fact he doesn't want to either. Because I don't need to spend money on things anymore. I might want to every now and again. And I always say when I'm working with people, if you want to do something, that's fine. If you need to do it, you've got to stop yourself and ask yourself why. Where's the need coming from?
I like that. Yeah. So
and that's so I like want. I think want is good. I don't like the really great saying, "Don't smell needy" when you're talking to people. I think that is a line that I use on people all the time.
I haven't heard that one before. Get the need stink off you.
Yeah. But it's when people are trying to be too salesy with you and they're coming off as being really needy.
Yeah.
If you think about, if you reflect that back on yourself, if you need to do something, if I feel the need to do something, I've got to really stop myself and ask myself why. And I've taught myself that practice. And that's a very positive, future focused practice. I don't then go, oh my God, where has that feeling come from? And does that come from when I was about age 7? And did someone say something that really hurt me? And I've got to go into therapy about it, because I think that's really boring, because we can live our life in the past, or we can live our life in the future, or live in the here and now, and be looking towards the future. I mean, don't get me wrong, there'll be some things that people go through that need a specialist kind of therapy. I get that. Some traumas. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the self-help industry that can be full of people who don't know how to move forward, but they don't want to move forward either. Yeah.
Well, that was from a sales perspective, a tip that was always given to me. If you want to create rapport with someone, talk about their problems,
exactly.
Because most people will want to talk about their problems, and you'll immediately get a connection with them. And as a salesperson, it's like, talk about their problems, then find ways to make the sale.
The spin technique. Have you heard about the spin technique?
Yeah. I've heard a version of it where
it's very good. It's genius. So it's just what situation they're in. So you're sort of chatting to someone, what situation you're in. Then what are the problems? Then what's the implication of not fixing the problems? And then you start negotiating. So if you use that 4-step technique, I use it on everything I do with coaching and everything. The negotiation is the future talking, the future pacing, how we're going to get you to where you want to be. Right. But if you get someone to see their problems for what they are and say, okay, if you don't change these, what will your life be like? Right, and then that's when you have that moment of, I don't want to be like this anymore. So, okay, well, let's look at the future. That's how I get people to stop looking at the past and looking at the future. Yeah, I had heard of it, but I'd forgotten. But that's pretty cool to get that spin on it. Unintended, I guess. Oh, sorry about that. But do you find, like, with working with people, that's a simple process to get them, and do they hold on to that, or do they switch back? They always switch back for a short period of time. Yeah. But then I believe anybody can change that way of thinking with practice and consistent practice. That's why I tend to work with people in 6-month chunks, because it can take that long to get them to stop going back. Yeah, well, it's about creating habits. Get me on the case every day. Exactly. It's like, do it or else. And I love that brutal love. It's fantastic. I mean, do you think we need a bit more of that? Have we got too namby-pamby in the way we're operating today? Yeah. Definitely. I did a talk at my daughter's school last year, school year, for the sixth formers. who were just about to go off to university or into the world of work. And there was me, a lawyer, and a civil servant, which sounds like a start of a joke, but it's not. But it was me. It was
I'm
me.
laughing already.
It was me. I was wearing smart, skinny jeans, a jacket, trainers. Right.
Yeah.
I looked smart, but I was not suited up.
Yeah.
There was a lawyer who was wearing all grey. I mean, he just looked like a grey. He just looked all grey. And there's like a typical, what they, you know, the old
you give
lawyer is.
and reflecting your personality as well. So sorry.
It was,
I'll take digs at lawyers where I can.
The civil servant who was an ex school, she'd been to that school, that school, and she was, you know, very in a dress. She was probably early 20s, 24.
Yeah,
not smartish, not smart, but not scruffy, but just sort of civil servant. And they were talking about interviews, and they were talking about Zoom interviews. And I said, do not fall into the trap of not getting dressed for the interview because you're on Zoom. Make sure that you are still really smartly turned out, and the person opposite you can see that you've made an effort.
Yeah.
And the civil servant said, "Oh no, we don't do that. We don't do that. We're not bothered about that. You could turn up to the interview wearing pajamas if you wanted to. That would never be a thing for us." And I just said, well, okay, if that's how you feel, then if you're going to wear pajamas, make sure they are washed, ironed, and buttoned up to the top. So because how you present yourself is showing respect for the person that you want to work with. Said full stop. And she was trying to argue against me, but she couldn't get past she couldn't answer back to, how do you show respect for that organisation if you can't even be bothered to get to brush your hair, or you can't be bothered to dress properly for it? Where does the respect come from? And it's this world of, you can do what you want and be what you want, and there's no respect anymore. It's just a really bizarre kind of, I don't know where it's come from. I don't know where it's come from.
But do you think, I mean, because when you're taking to that account, I mean, yes, she was saying don't get dressed up. But even though, because I was having that discussion with a friend recently who's, you know, preparing himself to go to court, and I said, when you go in that courtroom, make sure that you present yourself really well.
Absolutely.
That's going to, and because he's generally not, you know, he's a little bit scruffy around the edges. And I said, you make sure, and the part that stood out for me was just shortly after I'd been doing a few things on, getting people to do some work and looking at their profiles, and I was on the website that I hadn't been to for a long time. I'm not going to do a product placement here, but it was a website where you find freelancers, that kind of thing. And there was two. It came down to two, and they were both equally qualified, both equally, their work was, I would say, everything was equal. The difference was, one person was neatly was shaven, neat haircut, they were wearing a t-shirt, but it was clean cut, nice t-shirt. The other person, long hair, wasn't brushed, and in their photo, and I gave it to the person that was neatly dressed, just out of going, well, out of the two, unconsciously, I've got more trust that this person that's taken that effort is actually going to perform better.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I agree with it, and I agree with it completely, because I think that my dad taught me years and years and years and years and years ago that the man that shines his shoes is the man that respects not only himself but other people as well, and he cares for his belongings, and that's a really important quality to have, and it stuck with me. So the people who really care about their appearance. So on that day, I wasn't wearing anything smart, but I was the most well presented out of all of them, only because I just made the effort to think about the audience and who they were and all that kind of stuff. But I think it shows respect for the other people. I respect the fact that I'm here talking to all you people, and I get that I need to be a certain way. I get it. Why would you not just make that? This is a bit I really struggle with, is like with my daughter. I'm really big on, when we go out to dinner with people, she's got to look the part, and she's got to behave and speak and make eye contact and have some pre-prepared questions that she can make conversation on. Because I think that kind of life skill is really, really, really valuable.
What is it with
Really.
shoes? Because I was taught a similar thing: never trust a person in slip-on shoes. It was like, it was actually never trust a man in slip-on shoes, because I think from a woman's perspective it's different. But
Yeah.
but I've gender neutralized it, which I probably shouldn't, because it is a man. But never. I'm just in the habit of gender neutralizing everything I say.
Yeah.
But it was never trust a man in slip-on shoes, and it was kind of funny because similar sort of thing. There was a big case that I was part of, and we get into the courtroom, and I'm looking, and I looked at the lead lawyer from the other side, and he had these slip-on shoes, and I pointed it out to the barrister, and I said, slip-on shoes, can't trust that guy. Turned out and she looked at me, she goes, and I said, no, this is it's not the ladies, it's a guy thing. And you're a lady, you're supposed to have slip-on shoes. And then they lost the case, which is really cool too. It was kind of funny. But it's how do we, but is it part of that too? I want to come back to the finance thing. Is that part of having that respect for yourself, so that when you're you treat, because I know from my side of things, when I sabotage things, I wasn't respecting myself as much. I was going through a phase where I wasn't doing things, I wasn't being as conscientious as I should be, so my responsibility went down and my organization went down. Is that, from a finance perspective, do you think that links together into you need to maintain that consistency?
Yeah, absolutely. I think consistency in everything, isn't it? It's we all have our telltale sort of things that happen to us. What do they call it in cards? It's
tarot cards or something?
No. We play cards. The tell.
Oh, the tell, yes.
We all have our tell, don't we? Of what it is that we should be thinking about ourselves when we can see that. And money is normally the one that, because money is such a difficult conversation for a lot of people, and because people feel uncomfortable and people carry a lot of shame around money because they don't quite maybe understand I think the money can sometimes equal power, and I think people feel intimidated by it. And I think then people can often think, if I become someone who earns a lot of money, I'm going to become a different person, and I don't want to be a different person, or I'm going to lose friends, or people are going to want me for my money only, or if I spend too much money, I'm going to feel so much shame around that, and I can't tell somebody. Or if I get into debt, it's a very toxic feeling, isn't it, of not being able to manage something which is fundamentally so basic. And I think that when we fall off our own wagon, of our consistency wagon, I think the one thing that we will do is go to our old habits of making ourselves feel better, which were once protections. There were once things that had a positive intention behind them in the past. We've all had our protection methods, haven't we? Of buying trainers or buying shoes or something to make us feel loved and cared and worthy. This is going to make me feel like I deserve something, and I can forget about actually how I've done it. I think,
is that something, that the belief, from your process, like from my side of things, there was a self-worth issue there, that I wasn't feeling worthy enough, so I was trying to impress and to make, which never worked. It just didn't. Well, in a way, sort of, and this is probably where it had a bigger impact on my life. In part, it did work, if I'm going to be truly honest. But where it worked was interesting. Was when I had money. An example was, it was in Western Australia, and I was part of the drama school there, the West Australian Academy of Performing Arts, and I'd done a number of courses, not as a full-time student, but I've done a number of courses there, and I got to know a lot of because I was close friends with one of the senior staff members there. I got to know a lot of the shit. It actually happened to be when Hugh Jackman was there as a student, so wow. I knew Hugh Jackman before he was famous. Wow. He was quite skinny then, but he. In that moment, I was like, I was working, I was earning quite a lot of money. And in one of the classes, one of the students died in a motorbike accident. And where their family was, and where the memorial was a long way away. And these are not only are they students, they were art students, so they had no money. They were acting art students, so they had next to no money. And what I had done was I hired a big car, so that I could take these people and make it easy for them to get there, because I knew, I said, look, I'll do this. I'll hire this, this van, and we'll all go down and I took these people that would have difficulty getting there. And from that perspective, I was, it wasn't so much that I had money, but I was able to help people had a big difference. And that was part of my mind shift around money and my own self-worth. It was about helping other people. And when I made that shift, it made it a lot easier, but also too made my self-worth a lot easier, because it wasn't linked to the physical things I had, but more the attitude I had of helping people and the actions I did to help people.
That's huge, actually. That's really big, because you're not making it about yourself. You're making it about serving, being in service for others. And I think that's a really important mindset shift, isn't it? Of as soon as you stop spending money for yourself, and you're doing it, and you see money as an enabler to do bigger things. That's when you find a big shift. It's getting to the place where you're not spending money for yourself, you're doing it for other reasons. Yeah. Then I think it's not spending money for yourself then.
Because that happened a couple of times in my life where I've given away money that I probably shouldn't have, because I probably needed it, but somehow the money has come back. And I remember, I think I mentioned before, I gave away $20 when I didn't have it to an Aboriginal man in the hall, and another time, and he was dancing all around. But the next day I got a job but there was another time where I was at a charity auction, and for whatever reason, I can't remember even what I bought. There was something that I just felt really good about buying it, and I spent several $1,000s at this, and it wasn't one of those big Christie's type one where people are betting millions. But I was, I think it would have been about I think it was about 3,800 that I bid altogether, and I was by far the biggest person donator, and I got lots of accolades for that, and I felt really good about that. Much more than I'd had when I bought, my pair of sneakers, my green sneakers.
Yeah, well, because that's just for you, isn't it? That's why it's a big difference, because we live in a connected universe, don't we? And it's all energy at the end of the day. It's how we vibrate and the energy and everything. So what you put out there, you get back, and that's with negative and positive. So if you're putting out negative vibes, you're going to get them back, aren't you? In sort of amplified. And the same goes for positive as well. So I think when you're helping others and you're doing I'm a coach, and I need to get paid for what I do, otherwise I can't do it anymore. I don't do it. We're a whole load of women out there who don't get my help, who really it's been life-changing for them. So I know that it's a simple exchange, and money is actually a simple exchange of value. That's really what money is, and that's how it started. That's how it started, isn't it? Money was just, there was no money. It was just an exchange of goods or value. Correct, or service. Yeah.
And how do you split up a cow to get some milk or to get some cheese, whatever it is? Yeah.
Exactly. And it was only created because third and fourth parties got included in that simple transaction. So something had to be, I've got to give you this, which is the value of my cow, kind of thing. And that's where money came from. Yeah. So when you see money that way, it's just an exchange of value. It feels completely different, actually. And and money being a conversation, it's just a conversation as much as the weather. It should just be as normal as that, not have all the sort of tension around it.
What about because coming with the giving side of things with the money, because I read somewhere that the reason you should give is it gives you a mindset that there's more than enough. And I've thought about that a lot, but I don't know that I've understood it, or whether that's correct or not, or whether, I mean, do you think that has an impact? Because I've wrestled with that one, and I haven't got to an answer, because I said it. They say it was like giving money gives you a sense that there's more than enough, and therefore you're more, you're okay with going out and earning more, and or finding more and bringing more in, that kind of thing. And I'm comparing that to some of my friends I mentioned earlier that have a lot of money and they're just so scared they're going to lose it, and they live in that fear mentality of losing it. Do you think that works? I haven't been able to answer that question for me.
So your friends who've got a lot of money, are they? Do you feel like they're clinging onto it?
Well, so there's some that are really generous and that, but there's a couple of ones that I'm thinking of that I know that they very much, very, very frugal. And there's not there's anything wrong with being frugal, but it's more the attitude of fear that they're going to lose everything. I'm like, but you've got millions. What are you worried about? If you lose a little bit, what are you worried about? But it just seems to be this fear that it's all going to disappear and they're going to have nothing. But the point I'm more is, so
I know, I get it. I understand.
And then when you're going, the other side is, if you give some away, you're going, well, actually, there's plenty more out there. But I haven't been able to make the link between the two.
I think that, so it's an interesting point, actually, because I think in my height of bad money management, when I was in massive debt, talking 60, 70, 80, 90,000 in debt, ridiculous. I had at the time my sister and a friend who were, my friend rang me and said she can't pay for car insurance. And I just gave her the money for it because she needed a car. She's a single mum, she had 2 kids, and I know she needed a car. So I didn't have any money, but I gave her the money for the car, her car insurance. And I was happy that I could help her, but it didn't make me feel, it just put me more in debt. I didn't have the mentality of there's more than enough out there, because at the time I had a mentality of there isn't enough out there. And actually I proved, almost her not having the money for her car insurance reaffirmed my point, there isn't enough out there. So
yes. I suppose it is what you're giving. If you're giving someone else's money that you've got to pay back, that
exactly.
might not be
So exactly. So I think that, and then my sister needed some money and I gave her some money, and it wasn't money I had. And I don't think at the time I thought it's fine because there's more than enough out there. I just thought she just needs some money and I'll do this because she's my sister. I don't think I ever had that mentality of there's more than enough out there. But I think that mindset of there's more than enough is something that you've got to nurture on its own. I don't think that comes from giving things away.
Maybe that's why I haven't been able to make that connection, because it's, I read it somewhere, that's why you should tithe. But it's like, I'm going, well, but your example is great. It's like, it doesn't mean that there is more than enough. It just means you've given something away.
Yeah. That's it. So I just see it is. I try and look at money now so black and white and so practically that there's no room for emotional attachment to it. So it just is what it is. My sister needed that. I gave it to her. That meant that I was sure I was no longer had that money in my account. That was it. Then there was no kind of, so that therefore I will get more. Well, I only get more if I put myself out there and get more clients. That's
so
it.
What's the mindset? Because you say you disassociate the emotion from it. What's the mindset that you have around money that's making it work for you now? Is it that disassociation going, well, if I want more, I've just got to do this extra work or do work differently that's more efficient? Or how do you approach that?
Well, I just think that money is value, and I think value is everywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
I give so much value, and I put value out into the world all the time, and I completely believe in the universe. Actually, I'm a massive universal believer that what we put out there we get back. And I work really hard on my thoughts, because I know that my thoughts trigger my actions, and I know that then my actions will result in what value I put out and what I get back. It's kind of as sort of methodical as that.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any sort of beliefs, or, because I know from my perspective there was always, and I think this is part of, until I made the shift, actually, now that I'm talking about it, I think that's when that change for me happened, was there was always, the to have money you had to spend less than you earned. And I think I've talked about that before. And I hated that, and maybe that's why I self-sabotaged, because then I changed it to I'm going to earn more than I spend, and all of a sudden, whenever I needed money, and it's really weird how that happened. There was times where I'd have these massive bills come in, $50,000-$60,000 bills, but I'd have the income would just arrive. Like I wouldn't even be consciously thinking about it. It was like, oh, there's new clients here and this extra work to do here, and it all could be done in the same period of time. It's not like I had to work harder. It was work.
You've got a mindset of growth and abundance and positivity, and I earn more than I spend. I kind of, you wrote that, you said that in an email. I thought, oh my God, I do that as well. I hadn't articulated it in that way, but that's
Right.
how I think.
Yeah.
That's why a few weeks ago when I had my wobble, I was thinking, where's this come from? This is really bizarre. Why am I feeling so weird? Because I always know we earn more than we spend. And then
Yeah.
you wrote it in the email. I thought, oh, there we go. That's it there. That's the one.
But that's, I mean,
It's always, it's because the word earn is in there. And
yeah.
that gives me the responsibility to go and earn it. It's not, I think
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
people have I'm just going to sit, I'm going to think positive thoughts and it's going to arrive on my lap and I don't do anything about it. But that's not I earn more than I spend, and that's how it
Yeah.
works. Because I'm
Yeah.
earning it. So that's the bit I like, is I like the fact that the satisfaction of being able to earn the money to
Yeah.
create this life.
And I guess that's probably part of that, where you say you link it to value. You're going, well, this is value, and it's got to be whatever that value might be, but there's got to be some sort of action or effort. I don't like the word work, because I think work has a negative,
Negative connotations.
yeah, because effort can be leveraged, and I'm a big believer in leveraging as much as possible, getting as much bang for your buck as possible. But I'm full of puns tonight, aren't I? Because one of the other beliefs that I instilled, and mindful, I go along with Wayne Dyer when he said, "Yeah, belief is just a thought you've repeated over and over again." So one of the other beliefs that I've cultivated was I said to myself when a really dark period happened, and a major change in my life happened, and a lot of the wealth that I had, I actually gave away. Different story, but I just told myself over and over again, I'm a massive money magnet. And I would just say that it was, repeating it over and over again. I recorded it. I had a few other things that I recorded, and I played over and over again while I was asleep, and just like, I'm a massive money magnet. Huge amounts of money come to me. And I linked it also to having, like, wanting to have more money because I could help more people. I get constantly frustrated that there's a number of programs that I want to happen, and I don't have the financial resources yet to make that happen of my own without causing putting myself at risk. And I was like, well, if I had this extra income or extra resources, I could just do that. And so I've linked them two together, and it seems to be, for me now, growing consistently, and has done for some time, where the wealth continues to grow, the ability to earn continues to grow, more opportunities come forward, and I'm like, okay, now I can actually help with this program, I can help with that. And I find it really motivating on a number of factors. It gives me a lot of energy to do things when I feel like you should push through, but I just go, I just enjoy doing it. But I also see things.
You know what that is, though? You know what that is? Before I forget, I'm going to interrupt you. Do you know what that is? Just because you are creating something bigger than yourself. So the motivation is bigger.
Yeah. Go, keep going. Sorry.
That's it. That's doing. But this is what I said before. I said before, you can change anything when the motivation is bigger than your current circumstances. So you are creating something bigger than your circumstances right now, but also bigger than yourself. So you're actually creating a legacy, and you're creating something so big that the motivation is there. It comes out of nowhere almost. So you know.
Yeah. Do you think that is that struggle that we have? Because now that's actually, I need to process it a little bit more. But when I think about the money problems I had in the past, it was all about proving my self-worth, as in buying shit. I'm not going to beep that out. I'm not going to beep it. I don't know if that makes it an R rating.
But honestly, I think if people could just look at it that way, it would make them feel so much better. Because there's so much attached to self-worth when it doesn't need to be. I think we are so good as humans of overcomplicating everything and making it mean something that's actually not. When actually, I'm like you, my self-worth was attached to Jimmy Choo shoes. If I had Jimmy Choo shoes, I was all good. Actually, they didn't do anything, and they really hurt my feet. So it was no good. It didn't help me in any way, shape, or form. Actually, my self-worth was my deal. It had nothing to do with what I had on my feet. It was just, it was all to do with me. I think there's a point where you've got to try and deassemble all the pieces.
I think that's really important, because coming back to my son and the time I spent with him from a very early age, I've really instilled in him, one, love yourself. Or we used to say, do you like yourself? I used to ask him all the time, do you like yourself? He goes, yes, Dad, I like myself. Finally got to the point, yes, Dad, I like myself. The sarcasm that comes in. Okay, I'm pushing it a bit far here. I need to. But it got to the point now, and I do wonder about that from his perspective, where, I mean, he's not on social media, so he doesn't spend. We went out, like over Christmas when we were here. We went out a number of times. We had friends stay with us. We've gone out, and I saw his phone on his desk. I said, "You're not going to take your phone?" He goes, "No." And I go, "Well, but we're going to be sitting around, and you might get a bit bored." He goes, "That's all right. I'll interact with everyone." And I was like, I go, "You can't be 14. You can't." I'm listening to my friends' parents. Well, not my friends, but my friends who are parents constantly going on about how they can't stop their children from being on their phone, and here mine doesn't even want to take it with him, let alone use it much. And it's like, but I do wonder, is that because I have really drummed it into him from a young age? Do you like yourself? It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And it's the same, like when he'll be talking about something and he'll be asking for my opinion, and I'll say, well, what do you think? The same, like with school, a lot of people, I have some friends that are really drumming in, I wish they'd do better at grades and stuff like that. With Benjamin, I said, what grade do you want to get? What's your goal? And he thought about it, he went away and he goes, I want this goal, which was a high mark. Wasn't the highest. I didn't say anything. I just went, okay. Part of me was going, should be high. But it was still a really high mark. And then, this was a couple of years ago we did this. But then this last year, he's getting A pluses. And it's like, he got higher than he set himself. And he had set a high mark anyway.
No pressure though. He's not under any pressure, is he? That's a big difference. He's not under any pressure from you at all. See, say with my daughter, I don't put her under any pressure at school whatsoever. I say to her, you decide what you want to get out of it, and just all I'd say is get the most of the opportunity, because you've got a great opportunity in front of you. Just what do you want to get out of it? And we'll have those conversations. So she's under no pressure at school to get any kind of grades whatsoever, but she wants to get good grades, and therefore does get good grades, because I'm not at home beating up about it. She just says, you are not like anyone else's mum. They all go on about them or have a go. So you just don't talk about it, or we'll talk about, we'll unravel what's going on at school, but based on, well, what do you think, Daisy? What do you think? Well, what do you want to do? And I'll put it always back onto her. And I think it's because therefore there's no pressure. Massive pressure's massive. The pressure that we all put on each other is outrageous. As parents onto kids, it's not on, in my view. But there we go.
No, I mean, and because I said that's where I'm trying to link this to, again, the money thing of this self-worth, because from my perspective, and mentioned before, and we've talked about my Lego collection, which is quite a lot, and I also have a massive collection of radio controlled cars as well.
You need to get out more, I'm going to be honest.
But the thing is, I look at it and going, now, and I look at the difference between buying the sneakers and buying the Lego. I buy it because, as you said, I want it. I'm not buying it, and I'm not going, okay, I buy Lego and then I put it on social media and go, look what I bought and look what I've made and whatever. I'm doing it for me when I have time to do it and I enjoy doing it.
Massive difference.
And I mean, I do. When people come by and they go, oh, well, that looks really cool. Yeah, I feel good about it, but that's not who I am. I could get rid of all that in a heartbeat and not be concerned about it. I'd miss it a little bit, but not from whether people like me or not.
You don't attach your self-worth onto what people think about what you're doing. That's a big difference, isn't it? Your self-worth is not determined by anybody else. It's determined by you. When we're in the midst of debt or bad financial mindset, we're often putting our self-worth onto, we're putting it onto things outside of ourselves, which we have no control over, which therefore means we are out of control. Because when we put our happiness or self-worth onto something other than ourselves, we by definition have no control, which means that anything could happen, and it makes you feel really insecure. So what do? You find you sort of find safe harbors, and those safe harbors will be old habits from the past. So I think that's the problem. So when we're talking about what you're doing at the moment, you've got things that you want to do that are bigger than yourself. It creates a completely different. It's like, in a very simple terms, when you go for a run and you say, I'm going to run for half an hour, if you're like me, by 25 minutes, I'm desperate to finish. I'm done. I know that I'm nearly over. If you say I'm going to go for an hour, I'll go past 25 minutes and I'll be getting to 55 minutes and then I'll be ready. So the half an hour mark is not a thing any longer because I push myself forward. You're creating a bigger thing. Therefore, everything you're doing is bigger. You're looking further. So I'm trying to create a movement at the moment, and I don't know what it does or how it's going to work, what it's going to look like, but I don't have the financial backing at the moment to do it. But my motivation is there. But because I've got this bigger picture of how I want to help millions of women, suddenly everything I'm doing is elevated because it's become much bigger than me, like way bigger than me.
Yeah.
So that's what you're doing.
Yeah, but is it counterintuitive? Because this whole thing of, by not really wanting things, you actually have more. It's kind of really, I remember, it's like,
how that works.
it's kind of, because I think there was a quote from Oprah Winfrey, which said, if you focus on what you have, you'll always have more, which is, maybe that's because I'm just quoted the same thing that she quoted. So that's where it probably came from in my mind anyway. And it just seems like, because again, looking at Warren Buffett, using that and I don't know him personally, but I mean, I look at some other friends that I know that are extremely wealthy. There's one particular friend that I have. He's a massive property developer, and when talking about property develops, his personal property developments are in the range of $100 million to $500 million developments. So these are not small projects that his company does, and it's called kind of private. It's not really, you wouldn't know his name, you wouldn't know his company name, but he does some massive projects. And the thing that I've noticed was, I got to know him through the school, being fellow parents, and he, when I asked him, I said, "Can we have a coffee? And I just want to seek advice on some stuff." Now, we weren't friends. We just, knew each other, kind of touch base at school, and he goes, "Yeah, no problem." And just said, call up, and we'll organise a time. And so we did. And there's been many times where we've done that. And I said I'd buy him a coffee or buy him lunch. He always ends up paying anyway. And it was just like, I'm just wondering where that, he always had time. It's like, this is a guy that is a really, really busy, doing massive projects, but he always had time to give something more. And is that what we're getting to, where we need to have that?
Well, what's the most valuable thing? What's our most valuable asset?
Yeah, it's time. Yeah, we can't get any more.
Exactly. I think that maybe when you get to maybe him, what he's done is created something so big for him that the only thing that's bigger than that is his time.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing that, I mean, my husband is a businessman and he sort of runs some massive businesses in his time.
Yeah.
And in his sort of peak, he was running a £2 billion turnover business.
Yeah.
And he would always give people time. If people made the effort to say, "Can I have some of your time? Can I have a coffee with you?" like you did, he would always give them their time, because in his mind, time is the most valuable thing. Plus the fact his wisdom with that time is for somebody, a junior who's coming through, is like gold, isn't it? Because it is the one thing you can do. And I think that some people can be really selfish with their time for no real reason. And I think that actually that's the most, when people can give their time freely, and I think it says a lot about somebody.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works, because I know from my perspective, and there's some business partners that I have now, that actually the relationship started where they were in difficulty, and I didn't know that they had any skills or anything like that, but they were in difficulty. We were in a situation where I was in a position to help, and I helped them, and that was the motivation. That was all. It was never about business. And then through helping them, it's come up, well, they've got these skills, and that could fit here. And it's like, well, would you be interested in that? And that relationship has developed. Aside from you've got that I'm saying loyalty, but that's not what I mean. There was a deeper connection that we had because I helped them, that they, that they were, there was a deeper trust that was created in that, in the relationship that he had. It went, beyond a friendship. It was beyond business. It was just a deeper relationship from that foundation there.
Do you think that's because it was? Well, do you think it's because it's unintentional? Because the intention was never to make this a money making project. The intention was just to offer your help. That's it.
That was,
so that whatever the intention is, we know. I'm sure you are saying you must get a million emails. I get so many emails of people offering free this, free that, with the
straight
intention.
to spam filter. I don't see them now. I filtered them well.
But, yeah, well, the intention will be that I will have to start paying them at some point. So the intention is always this is a money making thing. Whereas you go into that relationship and there is no money intention whatsoever. It's an intention of, I'm just here to help, which
Correct.
I think makes the difference. When you have a relationship like that with somebody, or you build a relationship like that, then it never becomes about money. And if it turns into something, then that's something that's was never the original intention. And I think that's the beauty of it, and that's why it's so different. It's quite rare, actually, as well, to be honest.
Well, it's something, I mean, I've noticed, and because I've done this a lot with some clients as well, and some clients of clients. One in particular I was thinking of where, I mean, I wanted to maintain the contact, and I wanted some sales for my client was what I wanted. And it was just after New Year's, and I was like, I'm not gonna call up and do a sales call. I'm not going on behalf of my client. And I knew these weren't friends, so to speak. But we'd had talked a little bit, and I knew, about their family, that kind of thing. So I thought I'm just going to touch base, wish them Happy New Year. How was your Christmas? That kind of thing. This was a couple of years ago that this happened, and I made that call to a number of people with the intention. As much as I want to make a sales call, this is not going to be a sales call. My intention is to just touch base, see how they're going, make sure everything's okay. And underlying, just let them know that I'm still here by doing that. Not intentionally going, here, I'm just letting you know. And it was amazing. Out of the 8 people I called, 6 of them said, "Oh, glad you called. We've actually got some work for your client."
Oh, wow. Amazing.
And it was like, it was the easiest sales to make. It was like, I just called.
That's where I believe in the power of intention. And that's where, if you go right back to the financial wellness point, the power of intention is actually everything. So if you're going in life with the intention of, I earn more than I spend, I all the things we've talked about, then I believe you consistently have that intention, you will never have a problem with money. I think if you go in with the intention, I need to buy this to feel better, or I need us to fill this gap, or I am not worthy, then you're in a world of trouble, because you're not going to, that intention is negative, and it comes from a place of lack. It doesn't come from a place of plenty, does it? Whereas the intention of I always earn more than I spend is an abundant perspective. You're coming from a place of plenty, as it were. And I think that making that switch is the actual only switch you need to make.
Yeah, and making that switch, I mean, from my perspective, and I'd like to give like this really detailed and complex and make it sound like sell this massive course. Well, I'm not going to say sell mass course, but I just did. Now I'm going on. But the point I'm getting at is, for me to make that shift, I spent so many years on this journey to find to work out what the issue was, and not realizing that it was, initially not realizing that I didn't like myself, but trying to work out, how do I be successful was the thing. How do I be successful? And it's like the Acres of Diamond story, where the person goes on this journey around the world to find diamonds and find the riches, and then comes home and is on death's door and is digging in the backyard and finds the diamonds in the backyard. And it was, for me, that was kind of that journey where I was always trying to, how can I be successful? How can I be successful? What do I need to do to be successful? And not realizing that I already was successful, that, you know, and the shift to make that happen, especially from liking myself, was just simply saying to myself, I like myself. And that's why, I mean, part of it was driven by wanting to get Benjamin to like himself, or to make sure that he did like himself. And as a result, I did it as well. And it was just as simple as that, where I said, I like, and it became a habit. And then it became an unconscious process. And it's similar to, like, I have a personal mission statement that I wrote a long time ago, which is to enjoy life and share in the joy of others, to learn something daily that helps me overachieve, and to confidently and compassionately act for my values of honesty, excellence, and understanding. That's an unconscious thing now for me. I can't remember the last time I've actually said, I've said it on, actually, I shouldn't say I can't remember. I can't specifically pinpoint, if I'm going to be completely honest. But it's not something that I repeat all the time. I certainly don't repeat it daily anymore. But I can just recite it off the top of my head, and it's like, I guess it's kind of like spelling your name. You know, as a kid, we learn it over and over again, and then you'll never forget it. Is that the process, do you think, that we need to go through with, you know, liking yourself? Is just simply telling yourself you like yourself until such point, or are we lying to ourselves, and or is it just?
But we can't. I always say to people, there's one person in life you're guaranteed to spend the whole of your life with, and that's you. Yes. So you may as well get on board with yourself, rather than
I love that.
be constantly fighting. So or fear you're going to screw it up at any moment, which is what we live with ourselves forever, and that is as sure as death and taxes and menopause for women. It is that is the surest thing in the world. Yeah, because that is and that's who we are, and we of course are like sponges when we're growing up, and we take on board external influences, and, you know, by the age of sort of 7, we've developed our core beliefs based on our carers, whoever our primary carers are. But then you get to a place where I always say, when your kids are 12, they are becoming their own person, and therefore your influence is diminishing in the way that it was. But you're now becoming more of a role model than a parent. And I think that those who don't have kids will be able to spot the kind of beliefs they've got with who is in their world, the kind of people that they're with. Because I always think that we are living in a mirroring universe. So who we have around us is what we believe about ourselves. So if we have people around us who are not very nice, or toxic, or selfish, or trying to undercut you all the time, then that's how you believe, that's what you think about yourself. So if I always, because when I work with people in this situation, they go through a phase where they lose a lot of friends until they find different people to hang out with, and that's because the people they were hanging out with are the reflection of them as people then. And when they start to become more of who they want to be, they need to attract different people, and that's just a fact of life. So actually, the only way to fall in love with yourself is to tell yourself that you love yourself. But then if you think about falling in love with somebody else, how do you behave and how do you treat that person? You've got to treat yourself in the same way. So you've got to start caring about what you do to your body. You've got to start caring about how you look after yourself. You've got to start showing yourself a whole load more respect than you probably were, because we have unconscious forms of self-harm. Spending too much money is one of them, because that is a kind of self-abuse. So it's stopping all of that on yourself and treating yourself like the person you want to fall in love with. And that's a practice, and literally an everyday practice.
So is it as simple as that, do you think? Because I remember listening to Wayne Dyer talk about, you know, you need to treat yourself like you're this expensive vase, was his thing. That you know, and if you had an expensive vase, like $40,000-$50,000 thing, you wouldn't disrespect it in any way. You'd take good care of it. I mean, how do we make that shift? Is it? I mean, how does someone go, well, actually, I just need to do is tell myself I like myself. I love you. So stop fighting with yourself. I love. That's really. I mean, is that a case of just an awareness going, oh, I'm fighting myself, I just need to stop that and just be
Yeah,
consistent?
yeah. I honestly think that people need a complicated formula or a really long-winded explanation of what they're going, or a magic pill or a magic
Why do
practice.
we need that though, do you think?
Because I just don't think we trust ourselves. We don't trust that something so simple can work.
Ah,
So
yeah,
I often say,
yeah.
yeah.
Sorry,
So
so
we
you
all
often
have
say?
our, yeah, we all have our analogies, don't we, on what you got to treat yourself like. I'm a bit of a car person, so I would say,
I love that about you, though. I like
think,
cars too.
yeah, well, I've got this
Clearly.
weird, yeah, I've got this weird thing that I know too much about cars for a woman my age, and I also can memorize number plates, so I know when people are
Ah.
where people are
Are
from
you a
school.
number plate looker at her too? Because I do that.
Yeah,
Benjamin and I
yeah.
both do that as we're driving into the school. We're looking at that says
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And I also know, well, so and so's here and so and so's here. And Daisy goes, "How do you know?" So I just remember the number plates, or I make up words of what the number plate says. Anyway, so I say to people, think about buying the best car you could possibly buy in the world, and you have put this time and effort into buying this car, and what are you going to do with that car? And I get them to sort of say, "Well, gosh, I'd look after it and make sure it's in a great garage, and there'd be underfloor heating in the garage, and I'd be sort of getting someone to do this, that, and the other." And I said, "Well, that's what you're going to do. That's what you're going to do with yourself. You are that car. So however you treat that car, you treat yourself. You put good oil in it. You put good gas in it. You polish it on a regular basis to make sure it looks just beautiful. So you are the car. You are the car at the end of the day, or whatever it is that makes you realize is that's how you treat yourself." And then I've got another one where I say to women, predominantly women, I ask them how they feel. How do you feel naked? Just tell me how you feel naked. And they're like, "Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean?" I said, "Well, because how you feel naked says a lot about how you feel about yourself." And so how you feel naked, whether anyone else is looking at you or not, that's irrelevant. It's just how do you feel in yourself when you look at yourself naked? Because when you can look at yourself naked or think about your body as a naked body, which is how we came into this world, and actually, then that will tell you what you need to work on. If you can't look at yourself, if you are struggling with self-image, then there's a whole lot of stuff going on inside that you got to deal with or stop thinking and flip.
Is that I mean, because I like that analogy that you're doing, and quite, I mean, at my place at the moment, my son's not here, and maybe too much information, but I'm enjoying getting out of bed and walking through the house with nothing on. But it's like, is that like from a woman's perspective? Is that something a bit different? I mean, and I don't want to be gender.
No. It might be. I don't know. Mine is because I am me personally. I always think that what I learn about myself is kind of what I need to share with other people, because so we always think about our own medicine, don't we? What do we need for ourselves? What's our own personal medicine? That's what we need to share with the world, because there'll be some other women out there or men who need to hear the same. So I know that my emotional brain and my success is inextricably linked with how I feel about my body, and that is in a health perspective. But when I think, how do I feel naked? Am I feeling like I'm strong enough, fit enough? Do I feel energetic enough? I don't want to be carrying weight that I'm not a big fan of carrying weight, and it's just from a health perspective of being ill. And when I think about when I stop feeling all right is when I stop feeling all right naked. And so I put two and two together and thought, okay, when I feel all right naked, I'm really successful. When I don't feel all right naked, I'm not successful, and I'm starting to wobble, and I can start to see my bad habits coming out. So it's my tell is I've got to get back on the healthy wagon if I've slipped. And then when I start to feel better again, and it's just a really easy thing for me to work out. So I've shared that with other women, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's what I do." So it's just my kind of
I love that as a practice, like you say, it's a tell. It's something to alert you to go, hey, maybe I'm slipping here and I need to readjust. And I love that linkage. It's a great practical way of, because a lot of times we have a lot of theory but don't have the practical way of doing it. And how do you feel about yourself naked? It's like, well, that really is a test of how much do you really like yourself as you are.
We are who we are. If we
Yeah.
And this is not about how you look naked, because actually that's down to personal choice.
Yeah.
And whatever everyone wants to do with the bodies is their decision, but how you feel is completely
correct. Yeah, because that's the difference. The word feel. How do you feel about yourself naked? Which is like basically how do you feel about yourself? Do you like yourself?
I just put a twist on it with naked, because one, it makes people really stop and think, because they think, oh, well, to me that they might feel a bit sort of, oh, I don't know, I don't really want. And then if they can't answer the question, then that says something else about them, because they're hiding from themselves.
Yeah, no, and it's a great way of opening up. I love that. It's awesome. Is there a process that you go through, like, because I was thinking about, as you were talking about it as well, I was thinking about gratitude. Is that something that you have integrated as well? Because I know from my perspective, I've excuse me, I integrated that as an unconscious action that I just do now all throughout the day. It's like I don't have bad days because I'm always looking, going, oh, this is really cool, and this is really cool. I'm glad about this part of my day. And it's because I was doing it at the end of the day, going, at the end of the day, I'd go to bed and I'd make sure that I'd say, okay, what are 5 things that I'm really grateful for today? And I had a great conversation with Dad, and something with Benjamin, or my mum, or just simple things. I'm even, I've got a house, that I live in. I'm grateful for that. Or the grass is growing. That's really cool. My grass is growing. I love that. The simple thing. But now it's got to the stage where it's completely unconscious, and so I'm grateful for all these things. And that sets my mood a bit different, especially to do with money. It's like, well, I'm grateful that I have this ability to see these things. Did you go through a similar process, or did you find a way, is gratitude integrated into the money side of things?
It is now, like it's part of my psyche now. But oh my God, I had to force myself to do it. So my gratitude started when I had cancer, and I spent my so being a big busy person, it was a big job. I spent 18 months off work having chemo and all that kind of stuff. And I did not know what to do with myself. And I didn't feel any gratitude for anything. I'm not kidding. It was just none anywhere. And I started reading sort of Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay, and I reread my favourite Richard Bach books, Jonathan Livingston Seagull and Illusions. Illusions is my favourite book, hands down. Yeah. If you haven't read it, you can read it in a day. It's just the most beautiful book in the world.
What is that, Illusions?
Illusions by Richard Bach, Bach. It is a wonderful story, and if I ever need a lift, I just read that book. So I started to read these books and started to listen to people, and once I started, I couldn't stop. And it always came down to gratitude. Everything was gratitude. I thought, okay, I'm just going to make myself do it. So I wrote down every day 10 reasons to be grateful, and I started doing it 10 years ago. And haven't stopped, although I don't write it down anymore. I just think about it. So from the minute I get up in the day, the minute I wake up, my feet hit the ground, I go, it's going to be a great day today. Say it out loud. And then I'm so grateful that I've got the right coffee in. And I'm so grateful that I remember to buy oat milk. And I'm so, it's like, everything is a good. And if something bad happens, I think, okay, and I'm perceiving this as bad. Actually, is it? Is this what's this showing me? And that's find the gratitude out of the things that didn't go to plan.
So do you want to explain that a little bit more? Because when you're saying something bad happens, it's like,
well, yeah, because something bad happens. That's a perception, isn't it? You're perceiving it as being bad. So something bad happens to me. Like 2 weeks ago, my husband's job stopped unexpectedly. That was bad at the time, but then actually I was able to go, okay, is it bad? So what? It means that he's not away all the time at the moment. That's pretty handy. I like having him around, and it's also gives me the opportunity to work a lot more because I'm not doing the school run all the time, and actually it means that we can go to France in 4 weeks, which we weren't going to be able to, and well, that's pretty good. And they also, then I'm thinking all these really good things have come out of that event that I got myself out of in a day. 24 hours had gone of me sort of mourning it, and then I thought, oh, this is really good actually. But it's like a practice of, okay, what can I find good in this? Whereas 10 years ago, I would have been, oh my God, the world has ended. Like this is just No, I couldn't find good in anything, but I've had to train myself to do it. So I think that anyone can train themselves to do anything. It comes down to thought, because if you follow the thought process, you think about a circumstance is fact. You can't change it. It's just a fact, whatever your circumstances are. But what you think about those circumstances is your choice.
Yeah.
So you can change that thought. And then when you think about, okay, what thought am I attaching to that circumstance? Whatever you're thinking about that thought will then result in the action you take based on that thought. And the action you take based on that thought will then create the result. So if you change the thought, that's the line you've got to change. The action will change and the results will change. Yeah. It's kind of as simple as that.
Yeah. And is it the case, like from your perspective, was it when you said you were writing out 10 gratitudes every day, it was just having a book there as a reminder to help you write it out?
I bought a notebook and wrote every day religiously at the sort of, it didn't really matter what time of day. I wrote 10 reasons to be grateful, and they had to be different reasons every single time. And I couldn't elaborate on a different reason. So you got to get creative about what you're grateful for. So you can't be, and I stand by 10
reasons
now.
every day. You're going to run out very quickly. It's like you have to be very creative.
Yeah. Well, that's where the magic is. When if you give yourself the task of write 10 things to be grateful for every day, and everything's got to be different, suddenly your world changes, because all you can see is good around you. When you think, you're not thinking, I'm grateful for my family, my kids, my house. What you got, all that is gone in one session.
Yeah,
really. Then you've got to start to think about different things.
Do you think that links well into the money prospect of having money, being going, okay, I'm grateful for what's around me because that's an opportunity to create money?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's all gratitude is linked to everything, isn't it? So you can't. I don't think you're going to find many people who are really successful, really wealthy, don't have money hang-ups if they're not grateful.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
I think ungrateful people lose what they gain as fast.
What about from the perspective, because I know a lot of people, and I was one of those people that used to read a lot of books. And so I'd know all this stuff consciously, but I didn't do it.
Yeah, that's a big missing link, isn't it? That's a big missing link for a lot of people. We're full of knowledge and full of theory, but what about the practice? Whereas I'm full of, I've taken everything to the step of practice. I'm practice-tastic. I am, because
I love that. That's awesome.
I don't like. You see, right? Anyone can talk a good game. Like, knowledge is power, but it's not unless you put it into action. You've got to act on your knowledge, otherwise it's just a waste of time.
Because the shift I made was, rather than reading more books, I actually didn't read any more books. I read one book over and over and over again until I actually did it. Well, it was the Wayne Dyer book, How to Be a No Limit Person, and I still, there's still favorite passages within that. I read the book, but it was more the audio, because there was other bits on the audio that wasn't in the book, and that was one that I read over and over again. Think and Grow Rich, I've read. I can't tell you how many times I've read that. How to Win Friends and Influence People, same. It wasn't read it once. It was, okay, what is the thing? Don't criticize, condemn, and complain. And I love, I tend to quote movies, but I don't watch that much TV, which is kind of funny. I'm still haven't finished the last season of Cobra Kai, and that's, it's been a year now. Anyway, in the movie Saving Private Ryan, they're walking through the field, and I don't know what comes up, but they talk about, complaining. And they say, so Captain, don't you complain? He goes, well, there's a chain of command. Complaints go up, not down. So you complain to me, I complain to my superior, and so on and so on. And that was, like, for me, kind of a bit of a wake-up call as well, as a reminder of the Dale Carnegie, don't criticize, condemn, or complain, that it was just, okay, think about what you're doing and analyze that. And I very much instill that in companies that I work with and people that I work with, although I don't work too often directly with people as a client, but I help people. But it's when if you put forward a suggestion, especially with a corporation, it's like if you're putting forward if you're complaining about something, you need to have thought about how to make it better. You can't say this is shit. You've got to say what we've got is this problem here, and this is my suggestion to fix it. And I do that with the people that I work with personally. It's like, well, you're complaining about this. You're saying this is not good. How are you going to fix it? How are you going to change that? So when we're talking about money, when people I know that say they want more money, it's like, well, what are you going to do that's different? And stay away from the why questions. Why questions are terrible. I think even from a philosophy point of view, they're terrible because anyone can answer anything, and you just put some fancy words with it. It sounds like you know what you're talking about. So it's like, what are you going to do that's different? What are you going to do to change that? And that makes, and like you say, some people don't like that because
a lot of people don't like it because it means it's back on them, isn't it? Because a lot of people just want to take the easy route. So my husband has got a great line when he says his best advice to people is ride your luck and take the shitty mission. So take the job that looks like really hard work that nobody else wants, because that'll be the job that makes you. And he's right every time. Every single time. It's because people, all the sayings, people walk past opportunities, it looks like hard work. But because opportunity is creating an immense amount of value that you have not yet created. And that is why you've got to think differently about it. And that's all it is. So you could say it's hard work, but like you said, with the word work has got some negative connotations. It's actually, we are all striving to create an immense amount of value, but sometimes we have no idea how to do that. So you've got to think differently and got to think sort of more out of the current box that we're thinking in to make something we haven't done yet. Because if you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got. So you've got to do something different to change it. And but that puts it all back on us. That's why people don't like it. They want the quick fix, especially as generations are coming through. They want a quick fix. They want someone else to pick up the hard graft, as it were.
But is it a case too, because I look at it, an example, and I think I may have mentioned this before, with my son, he's doing karate, he's nearly got his black belt. And over the years, I've got to know his sensei quite well and we've become good friends. And we were talking about, whether something's hard or easy. And I said, well, that's relative to your experience. Because you were saying it's hard work and I was saying, well, is it? I think it's relative to your experience. So, and I said to him, you're a 7th Dan black belt. If I asked you to do grading at a yellow belt level, which is the first grading, how hard would that be for you to successfully do? And he goes, it'd be really easy. And I said, well, it's not because the task is hard. It's the hardness is relative to your experience. And do you think it's a case for people as far as money goes? Like from my perspective, it was never difficult for me to earn money because I was always looking for how do I add value. I mean, one way I did after I'd left the army and I was fluffing around, not doing much, but I was wanting to earn money. And a friend, she said, well, why don't you go work up in the mine site? There's lots of good money up there. And I went, oh, it's a good idea. And asked the question, you get an answer. And then, I was like, well, okay, how do I get a job? And I found the top 5 contractors that were working up there. And this was back before I had a computer. So, and the computers were mainstream in the house, well, certainly where I was anyway. And I handwrote a letter of application to all 5 and sent that off. And then the next day, I handwrote another letter of application and sent that off. And I did this, and that wasn't hard work. I don't think it was hard because I was pretty much repeating the same letter, but I was just doing it. So it was showing that and what happened was after 2 weeks, I got a call from one of them and said, you seem really keen. Why don't you come in for an interview? So I was showing that I had value because I was showing that I'm actually enthusiastic. I'm taking the effort to write these letters, and I got the job. And do you think that's a case when we look at it? Because if you look at having money, there's really only 4 steps. The first one's not really covered in George S. Carlson's book, which is which is what we've just talked about. Add value. Well, it is actually add value, and you'll get paid for that if you manage that right. The other 3 steps are keep a surplus, invest the surplus, and reinvest that surplus. Do you think it's a case of not trying to do everything all at once? Get your mindset right first, add value. Once you're consistently adding value, then train yourself, spend that time to create a habit of saving some, rather than looking at all the investments and possible things you could do and confusing yourself with that. Just get in the habit. Can you regularly save money while still living? And then take it the next step. Well, how am I going to invest? And then focus on, okay, how do I invest? And the next part should take care of itself. Do you think that's a process people should follow, or what advice would you have?
Yeah, I think there's a step before that though, and I think it's an educational point of learning about money to start with, because who teaches you about money in terms of how you feel about it? I don't think anyone does, unless your parents do. And my parents definitely did not do that. And my parents never talked about money, apart from I knew that they were running to the letterbox on a regular basis. But there was never any chat about cash. There was lots of stress and lots of arguments and lots of, stuff going on, which probably was a financial thing, but I had no idea. So I was never taught about money. So have an education, have an upbringing where money is just as talked about as much as what you're having for dinner. It's just that easy. There's just no emotion around it. It's not imbued with anything other than it's just an exchange of value. I think that's number one. And then have that mindset where money is actually really easy to earn. Really, anybody can earn money if you. It just depends on how you can do it. You could go. I mean, when I was 16, I was working in a shop, in a warehouse. I was making sandwiches in a sandwich shop, which I got sacked for because I put too much filling in the sandwiches. And then I was too much filling in because I was making sandwiches, I had to eat them myself. So they were really, really busy, and they couldn't work out why they were so busy, because I was making these amazing sandwiches. Then they did the profit, the stock check at the end of the month, and thought, oh my God, we've got hardly any, we're in deficit because she's been putting so much filling in the sandwiches. So all these people buying these wonderful sandwiches with hardly any money. Anyway, I got sacked. But then I just found another way. Well, I'll make wall hangings and sell them, or I'll just go and work here. I'll go and work. The money is actually really, really easy to earn. Really, really easy. If you think it's easy, it'll be easy. Yeah. But it's having the mindset. So yes, having the good education around money is just value. Having a mindset of it's easy to earn. I always earn more than I spend. And then having the education of how to invest it and how to make it work for you. Because I just think these things are missing in our world.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I remember, and the sandwich thing reminded me, because as a kid, I grew up in a small country town, so I used to strap the lawnmower to the back of my bike. Had a crate on the back, so I put the fuel can in there and strap the lawnmower there and tow that around and just knock on people's doors and, can I mow your lawn for you? But that ended. One client ended. They had a big yard, and I mowed my initials into their yard to their grass, which they weren't happy about. I don't know what the motivation was there, but it's just one of those things. But like you say, it wasn't difficult to. That was relative to my age, but even today, it's not that difficult to actually go out and say, well, here, especially, I think even more so today, because we've got such a labor shortage. If you just show a little bit of initiative, I think I was reading a statistic that's saying if you work an hour extra a week, that actually translates to a 40% increase in salary. And so an hour a week is not, a 40% increase in effort. So it's amazing how much opportunity is out there. So how do you get that mindset? Is it just a case of just going out there and doing it, do you think? Or because I never, it's one of my other movie clips that I've got. I've got these little clips that I've cut together, and one of them's from the Cars 3 movie where Lightning McQueen's asked, how did you know you can do it? How did you know that you could go out there? And he goes, well, I don't know. I just never thought I couldn't. For me, it was like that became the times when I looked at it where I've done things, I've just gone and done it. Like I mentioned before about betting the house. It was like I've just gone and done it.
I actually think that's it. Your belief is so strong that you just don't ever doubt that it's ever going to work. And where that comes from is because I just go back to the thing that it's bigger than you. So I can sort of pinpoint when I've had that belief of it will just work. When I had my daughter, I had IVF to have my daughter, and that was I was given a piddly chance for it to work, and I made it work because I just had no doubt in my mind it was going to work. Just no doubt whatsoever. I was absolutely. I was behaving like a mother before I'd even started the treatment. It was just there was just no doubt in my mind. Same when I had cancer. No doubt at all that was ever going to be other than a really healthy woman at the end of it. Just there was just didn't even creep into my mindset that this might not work. Just wasn't there. It was so big and so strong that I was just full of belief. And I think that when you are so full of belief in something, actually you will find what you would see as problems when you're not full of belief just aren't problems. I think it's just you just carry on. And I think you said it with your house. I think it's that mindset to instill. But then the question will be, well, how do you believe in something? What is it that makes you believe in something? That was
my question I was going to ask you.
Yeah. Well, because good question, because that's what everyone asks is how do I find that belief? Well, if you haven't got the belief right now, it's because you don't actually believe in what you're doing. If you believed in what you're doing, you would have that belief. So it's re-looking, it's re-evaluating everything and thinking, okay, what is the missing piece that is creating that? That's all it is.
And is it simply as simple as that? From my perspective, I say it is. I mean, to me, it was my belief. It's just going, that's my choice. And I use the word choice because a lot of times you ask people, I found when I ask people, what do you want? They always go, I don't know. And I get all these groans and stuff like that. And then I switched it one day. I asked, what do you choose? And it was almost like a light means what? You mean I have the ability to choose? It's like, yes, you do. And that became for me a shift in being able to get people to go, okay, there is more there because I choose. What do you choose? So that was something that I changed. But
that's really good, actually.
Because
when I work with women, there's a process, isn't there? When I work with women who want to lose weight, for example, who they haven't been able to lose weight ever, and I'll say, okay, why do you want to lose weight? Oh, I want to, get back in my clothes. And after a load of questioning, I'm like, what? But really, what is it? And getting really under the skin of what it is, it'll turn out to be something like, if I don't lose weight, I think my husband might leave me. Or if I don't lose weight, and it's something that is a deep fear of theirs that they have been unable to voice. Yeah. And it's something that they're too ashamed of or too scared to say out loud, because I think if they say out loud, it might come true. But they haven't been able to lose weight because on the surface, and all they're allowing themselves to believe is, I just want to get back in my clothes. I want to be able to do my jeans up again. I want to wear a bikini on the beach in summer, whatever. That's what, and that is not a big enough motivation, because actually that just isn't a motivation whatsoever. But so they can't achieve it. But then when you get to the real nitty gritty of what actually is going on, and they start, it gets really emotional and just say, oh my God, but what was if my husband goes off me? Or what was if I can't care for my kids if they're toddlers or whatever? Once if I can't run out, once I'm showing my daughter that this is what women are like, and it's a really deep-seated fear. When you hit that fear, they lose weight. It just goes away because they've found the source and they've found the motivation. Whatever that motivation is for them personally, it's bigger than the weight they're carrying, and the weight just disappears because they just make the choice to live differently. That's it. It is just like an overnight switch. I say the same with money.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the same with money. When people have got a bad money mindset, they say, well, what is the motivation behind? Why do they want money? What is it that they want with money? And if they might say, I want to buy this, want to buy that. Well, actually, we both know that you can buy lots of shoes and it means nothing. But what's the real motivation behind why they want money? And when they get to the point of security or generational wealth, or I want to put my kids through private school, or then you get to the serious stuff, and then the mindset shifts because it becomes bigger than them.
It's interesting that, because I mean, from my perspective as well, with the security side of things, it was always, and maybe it's because I've had a lot of jobs when I was, working jobs, and as a, my own owning my own business, it never had a problem finding clients, and but because I've had so much experience of not having it, I never had a long-term secure job, because I always got bored and moved on to something else. So I've never had that fear or feeling of security that I've gone, oh, what if? Because it was always, for me, it was like, well, I can earn more money. That's not a problem. I'll just go out and get another job.
There's your reason why behind it, though. You must have a very strong belief system behind you of why you want to do it and your bigger picture. Because I think when you attach a bigger picture,
I just think I'm really good. Had lots of value.
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe that's all you need to know.
But it is that, it's kind of that attitude where I know I know I've got a lot of value to add. Not everyone wants that value. Has been my thing, my learning experience of going, okay, I know I can fix this and make this work smoother and faster, and if you let me do that, I'll do that. That was when I was an employee, I did that, and even as a, in my business where I'm working with directly as a consultant, when I do that type of work, I mean, I've had that where with a particular client where I said, this is a strategy, we're going to solve this problem. And it was a $25 million dispute. So no small feat. And so the thing you got to be careful about here, because I do a lot of contract and dealing with contract disputes and things like that. I said, the contract is, if the mediation fails, either party can take it to court. And that's when the real money is going to be spent in solving this dispute, because you're going to be paying lawyers. They're going to go through every little thing. This is a $25 million with 2,000 different claims elements to it. It's going to rack up. You don't want this mediation to end. And I put in place a strategy, and I'd started that, where I said, we'll go through this process. We'll cause a notice of dispute under the contract, and we'll control the mediation. So we'll say this is how we want to do the mediation, and make it run for a long period of time, so we can have the time to work through all of these, and we'll resolve that. And working with it, and one of the big managers come in and said, yeah, that sounds really good, but I want to run it by external legal firm. And what do you think the external legal firm said? Let's do a one day. Let's do a one-day mediation was the thing. And so, like, how can you solve a $25 million problem in one day? It's not going to happen. The mediation failed, and now what I understand, it hasn't finished yet. I'm still, involved on a cursory level with that, but not directly anymore. They've spent nearly that in legal fees. It's ridiculous.
I'm not surprised. I'm just not surprised. Well, with everything with legal fees, is it like, which is my experience of divorce, is that with divorce, it goes three ways, isn't it? You split things three ways. Well, a third goes to the legal side.
Well, that's a good point. I hadn't heard it put that way before. But the point was, from coming back to that, was I believed that I had value to offer, and I also wasn't too concerned about the downside. I guess too, partly because when I did get married, when I originally got married, that was later in life. So I didn't have a family to look after for most of, right until my early 30s. I was only looking after me, or, whoever I was, might have been dating or whatever. But then, the person I was with had their own job and that kind of thing anyway. So I maybe that was part of the reason why I was willing to take those risks, because I didn't have that responsibility as well. But in a way, it then trained me to go, what the hell, I can do this. I've done so many jobs. Don't hold this against me, but I even worked in real estate once. So I was a real estate agent. I know, like, porn's coming out of my head. But when I was set the exam for the agency, the director came out afterwards and said, you just blew it out of the water. And I didn't think it was anything special. It was just going, I can, whatever. But that was my belief from earning money, was just like, no matter what happens, I'm going to be able to go in there and add some value.
Well, there you go. That's the belief, though, isn't it? That's the belief, is that you can add value. Therefore, your self-worth is very strong, because you can add value. So you only believe that. You can only believe you can add value if you are worthy of adding value.
Yeah.
You can The other thing about money is you have to be able to receive. Which is a side of it that I hadn't probably quite appreciated for quite a really long time. Is that when people can't receive a compliment or they can't receive help, they normally can't receive money either. So they'll be the kind of people who might earn money but spend it or lose it quite fast because they can't receive it in a way that's needed, because otherwise it's like a 2D picture, isn't it? Because you need the third element of you being able to accept that what you've been, the exchange in value, you've got to be able to accept it. So
what you're talking about there, just to clarify for the listeners, is you're, if I understand correctly, you're talking about if someone gives you a compliment, then you dismiss and go, you did really well. So no, I didn't.
Someone might say, "Oh, you look great. I really like your boots. Oh, I got them in sale." Can't receive a compliment. Or your hair looks great. Oh no, I just I had it done. I didn't do this.
Yeah,
that's if you can't receive a compliment, you'll struggle to receive money or anything, or relationships or love or anything.
I used to do that a lot. Now, if someone gives me a compliment, it's always thank you. I really appreciate that. And that was a major mind shift, which I hadn't thought about it, but that's a good point that you raised. But it certainly was linked. That change happened when I liked myself. That was like, I can
all comes back to the same thing, doesn't it? All comes back to the same thing.
Yeah. The other one I'd add to that is saying sorry as well. A lot of times you'll get, it's like people, you will say sorry for no reason whatsoever, as if it shouldn't. And to me, it's, if you did something, and you hurt someone accidentally or something like that, or, say sorry. But there's a lot of times where I've noticed people, you'll be walking along and someone won't even bump into you. They'll turn around and see you. That's an example. It's like, we'll be in a supermarket, they turn around and see you and they go, "Oh, sorry." And it's like, what are you sorry for? It's like, hello, it's nice to meet you. Maybe I was Crocodile Dundee too many times. G'day. But that's a good sign, isn't it? When someone says sorry all the time, that they feel like they're taking the blame for everything. Therefore, they've got no self-worth. So it all comes back down to the same thing. I think that seems to be where we're heading with this, isn't it? It's like from a money mindset, when we're talking about that, the money wellness and revolving doors. It's unless you actually fix the band-aid, or not fix the band-aid, fix the issue, not put band-aids on it, the door is going to keep revolving and you're going to go round and round in circles. I know Absolutely. I did. I certainly, I earned a lot of money, threw it away, earned more, threw it away. And it was only when I liked myself that that it all made different. And part of knowing I like, so I was going to say, part of knowing was one, not apologizing where I didn't need to apologize, and accepting a compliment. I love that you brought that up, because they are two key identifiers, and now I'm going to enjoy walking around the house naked more too as well. So.
Oh, there you go. It all works. I think all comes back to it. And also letting go of any shame that you may have around your money habits in the past. I think it's a huge one as well.
Yeah,
because we've all had money habits in the past that we've not been overly proud of, some worse than others, but who cares? They're in the past. You've got to learn from them, and when you stop thinking about them as anything big, it means that you like yourself again, because shame is just about not liking yourself.
True.
And that's it. And I think I did for years carry a lot of shame around my inability to not get into debt. I was just in debt all the time. I lived in debt. Yeah. And I'm not ashamed of talking about it. I've learned a lot from it. I find it really empowering now that I'm able to share a story about what was going on in my life when it was going on. And now I wouldn't dream of getting into debt. It just wouldn't be part of my world.
Yeah.
Because I like myself too much to do that, and I love my family way too much to do that. So it's just like it's a shift. But it's that let go of shame, get comfortable naked, and really like yourself. I think you'll be all right.
I think we've summed it up there. For me, I relate to that a lot. I think that really does sum it up. Let go of that. Get comfortable naked and like yourself.
Yeah.
I think we've gone on for a little bit, which has been really, really valuable. So I've loved the conversation as always. Thank you very much, and look forward to our next chat.
Yes, and you have really good. I suppose it's nighttime for you, isn't it? It's the morning for me.
Yeah, it's 9:30 here, so I'll be, just relaxing a little bit and then heading off to bed soon. So
Nice, good stuff. Enjoy, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.